This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
I remember when we were driving in your car. Drove so fast, felt like I was drunk. And city lights right out in front, and your arms are wrapped right around my shoulder. And I got a feeling that I was wrong. And I got a feeling I could be someone.
Welcome to another episode of Coffee Break, ladies and gentlemen.
How do we always start singing?
It's me. I just love a song. I just always want to get into it. Also, what a track. There was they did a live version of it recently that was stunning.
Who's the guy that did it?
Oh, yeah, there was like a country guy or something.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
That was bloody good.
Yeah,
what a track.
No, I saw the cover. There was some sort of dance remix that I just hated.
No, I don't want a dance remix.
That song's
like
it's like was it Kygo or someone did?
Oh, yeah.
Stay out.
Too much of that.
Oh man, Kygo. I tell you what. You know where I saw Kygo? Las Vegas, and it was one of those pool party things where you had like a lily pad thing. And I tell you what, you start off the day and I'm like, so there's like 200 people just in a pool listening to a DJ. I'm like, everyone's just peeing in that pool. That's disgusting. Like, I don't do that. 3 hours later, you're just in the pool, just
I'm never going to be in there.
Yeah, I'm never going to be in there 3 hours later. Woo!
Yummy.
Sounds absolutely delightful. But anyway, we had the Rumble Coffee Roaster guys here.
Ready to rumble.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was a very good podcast.
It was a great podcast. Those guys are great. They've been in the industry a long time, and you can just tell like they've got a lot of thoughts that are really well articulated and are very poignant to the industry, and they kind of see like where the issues are and how it could be better. Love them.
I actually just got permission from Joe. So we were having a chat after the podcast.
Yeah.
And so he actually had an extra hot take that he didn't use that I actually asked for his permission to use. So Joe's extra hot take with Two Sugars 2.0 was that there's a lot of baristas in Melbourne that aren't making very good coffee.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would have to say that'd be true.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I don't think they're really put in a position to succeed.
Yeah.
So it's like, one could be the training, one could be they're asked to do too much, and one they don't have the
proper support, the proper equipment, the proper resources. I had like ones. I remember doing a post where I said something about like, it was like cafe red flags. And I was like, if the barista is filling up the milk into a milk jug that's already got old steamed milk in it and they're just topping it up and steaming again, get out of there. Like, that's not good. And there's so many people like coming back at me, like abusing me. Well, you try working in a rush at like with one person making 100 coffees in this time, and you try to do this and I'm like, don't get angry at me. Get angry at your management, because you're clearly in a place that is not building you up to succeed in that position.
One thing I always find really interesting on the topic of automation, because that's how this conversation came up, is that the coffee industry is so for it, really. Like, there's some people that, don't think it's worth it and whatever, but at large, a lot of the coffee industry is like, yeah, we should embrace a lot more of this stuff so we can kind of train people to do other things. But it's kind of like a lot of people, customers or coffee drinkers that I speak to, they're like, oh, I like the artisanal sort of aspect of it. It's kind of like, well, actually, that's kind of what's putting at risk, you getting a good coffee.
Quality.
We talk about espresso a lot. It's like, it's actually really hard. The chances are against you to make a good one. And a lot of people within the industry, they actually really want automation to thrive and help make coffee better.
Yeah. You want to remove as many variables from each point. Like, think about how many variables you have, all the way from someone picking a cherry on a farm to it getting to you, to then a barista having to take it and have 3 to 4 steps before it's put in the machine to make sure that this thing is going to taste good. That's where we compare ourselves to wine. But, the dog's just running through, going to knock over all the expensive cameras. No, when we compare ourselves to wine, it's like the hard part is done in the winery. where they're, going through all their processes. Then you put it in a bottle and you get it, and it is what it is. For coffee, you've got someone making it by hand, like in the store.
It's it's like the most crucial part of it all, really. It's like, was this person's months of hard work growing coffee and picking it and shipping it and then getting it roasted all worth it?
Yeah. And we won't go into naming cafes, but I've spoken to people who are working with a bit of automation, but also with monitoring like the flow of different coffee shops and like monitoring the machines and what the extraction's like. Because there are now machines that you can have plugged in to your coffee machine, your grinder and all that, and it will actually monitor like what the extraction rate is and like what percentage you're pulling well. And even at the best cafes, it's like 70% or something of like at a quality level. Whereas when you get into automation, you're looking at much higher numbers where it's auto adjusting and making sure that it's great. So there is that nice side, but you're always, eventually you're going to get better results from automation all the time.
To give a good analogy on this, I think, you look at 20 years ago, how did you find your destination? You had to look up in a map, a physical map, and literally follow the streets, probably have a passenger telling you how to do it.
How dangerous is that back there, trying to read like a map as you're driving?
Then, it evolved into having something like a TomTom, the GPS on the thing. Now it's on your phone. And how much, that's one of those innovations where it's like, how much easier is it to get places now and find things?
I guess that's a bit of a response, right? Like you're saying, like the hot take being that baristas aren't that good. And so the obvious one is like, well, education needs to be the thing, like better teaching and all those things. And it's like, there's a reason that that's happening because there's so much expectation that coffee is available in every single place you go to. A barber now has...
that's a good point. But it's not so much that baristas aren't good. Just to get good takes a very long time. I mean, and we have so much more equipment now that makes our job easier. Like volumetric machines. You probably started on a manual machine, then you can, which you literally had to manually turn off when, it reached a certain volume or weight, something like that.
No, it was always volumetric.
Yeah. And so I spent some time on a manual. And so you're constantly managing what's going, how that's working. And then it slicks to volumetric where the machine will literally measure the flow of water. And once it's hit a certain point, it'll cut it off for you. I've got a machine now that is brews by mass, so it literally cuts the coffee off at a certain weight.
Yeah,
so it's like very, very efficient.
And the final like variable that's getting worked on, I think we chatted about it with our old mate Quail. He's just getting some shout outs today. Is the grind by sync, which is the new one, because at the moment, some of the lack of automation that I think people want to see is they just want to see a barista moving their hand, because it's like you put it in a grinder that grinds by weight or whatever, you get your dose, you put it in a puck press, it tamps it, then you put it into a machine and you press the button. The new automation that's coming in is it'll then measure that yield and the machine will tell the grinder to adjust itself based on the flow rate of the coffee. So if it comes out a bit fast from the espresso machine tells the grinder, hey, you need to grind a little bit finer. It goes...
Yeah, you can literally watch it adjust.
Yeah.
So sick. Yeah, and this is a great thing. Like, name a barista out there that doesn't want that. Like, do they really want to go through the thing of having to manually, change it themselves?
So that's pretty much fully automation. So I think this kind of like ties back into the original Apple model with like the iPhone and that kind of thing. Like what Steve Jobs did when he first released that was wanting to make people struggle when there are big technological advancements and changes, or when the way that you use something changes. So for the phone, when the YouTube app used to be an old TV icon, your keyboard on your phone with the first iPhone, it's like the typewriter. It was adding all these things and tactile things that we were familiar with, trying to put it into that to make it more accessible and more usable. Do you think this is a similar thing with automation where we're pretty much going fully automated, but the fact that a barista's moving their hand in the same pattern they were before, that feels like it's better. Whereas if you just have a machine where you press a button and it spits out the coffee, you're like, oh, well, that's not as good.
Well, you still have to calibrate it. You still have to know how to taste. So the skill's not entirely gone. But like
I'm talking more about the visual side of it, like from the automation, but it looks like the old world of making coffee, or automation where it's...
So it's like reskinned in a way, you're kind of saying? Like,
yeah, like people would prefer to see like, a machine that you'd see in a Coles. If that was making as good of a coffee as like, the full Lamazocco and grinder setup and that kind of thing. People just prefer, I think, or are more familiar with that. Whereas the other one's kind of associated with cheap and bad.
Yeah, well, there's Coles, and we had Ross come on the podcast and say, like, find me a better coffee for $2 than a Coles coffee, which is, very interesting take. So there's a lot of I guess bigger chains will be at their they'll actually be quite successful at making pretty good coffee, which is to some people that might not even acknowledge that as possible. And I guess we can kind of discuss this with what I'm doing in the next 6 months, because we're actually going to open a new cafe. I can talk about it a bit more now because we've actually signed on the dotted line. That's happening.
Hell yeah. And congratulations.
Thank you. But the thing is that what we're planning for this cafe is going to be so different from the first one and embrace tea. But like embracing different machinery that people probably wouldn't expect from a specialty coffee cafe. So, and this is something we'll probably document in the next 6 months. I'm actually traveling to Sydney and the Gold Coast in the next few weeks to actually go and test some machinery to finalize as well.
Well, you've always kind of pushed it, even from like the way that you're making coffee at your cafe now. You've kind of rethought like the dosing and the methods and how you're going to do it without going into too much detail.
Well, fuck it. We can do that too.
And go into it?
Well, yeah. So we have been embracing
sorry, Rumble guys, we're talking about other stuff.
But this is all incited by them because they've got a very progressive outlook on this.
Yeah.
When I opened the cafe, I had in mind it's like, well, we're operating in a different industry now than it was 5 years ago. We need to find ways where we can cut costs. And using my knowledge that I had, I was very lucky that I worked at St. Ali when I did, because I got to learn from some of the best. Leon Holdsworth, Matt Perger. One of the things that I learned that you don't actually need in your everyday life, but it actually frames making coffee so well, is calculating extraction of coffee. So that's probably gibberish to a lot of people. What that means is measuring how strong it is using a coffee refractometer, and I can bring that next week to illustrate this a bit better. But measuring how you can actually measure the strength of your coffee in a percentage.
And basically that's just the amount of coffee particles that are inside the water. So if you have a glass of water, what percentage of that is the coffee particles?
Yeah, so I think I said last week, an espresso is 10, 11, 8 to 10% coffee and 90% is water. A filter is 1.2 to 5% coffee dissolved and the rest is water.
So it's like when you have a filter, it's 90% water.
Yeah, but you can actually calculate how much you extract from coffee and make better business decisions with it and better flavor decisions as well. So what we did was we thought, well, we want to use coffee efficiently. So we use a 25 gram dose. Now, what we kind of worked out is that,
and just for reference, what would most cafes be working with there?
Probably like a 20 to 22 gram dose. So
they're much lower, like 19.
19, it can go as low as 19.
Yeah, and 19 is a big one in the home market because of smaller. So 18 to 19 is kind of like the number, and different roasts and blah, 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 blah.
But what we identified was that most people that get a takeaway coffee, and we're working in the city serving overwhelming majority is takeaway coffee, is that the most popular size is an 8-ounce coffee. Mm-hmm. So, most coffee cafes in Melbourne, to make a coffee that's strong enough for an 8-ounce, you actually need a double shot. So it's like you're using 19 to 22 grams, let's say, 2 shots going to that 8-ounce coffee. So it's not anywhere between 19 and 22 grams per coffee, right? So what we figured out was that, well, hang on, let's use a 25 gram dose. We calculated the extraction of it and split it into 2 shots. So what does that become now? 12.5 grams per coffee. So this might not and I knew that we had to start with this. We couldn't just implement it later
and you're almost half then the cost of someone else's pulling a double shot.
We calculated that we use probably 30 to 40% less coffee year on year than a cafe that makes the same amount as us.
Which is, I know this isn't the blockbuster moment that we're talking about, but it's these kind of changes that it used to be, everyone used to want to puff up their chest and be like, we go through 40 kilos a week. We go through 60, 70 kilos. Yeah. And that was in a time where everyone was convinced to run double ristrettos and every single coffee was using a 21 gram dose, even for just like an in-house basic coffee.
And don't get me wrong, you can still do that and make a great coffee and sell enough to do great. And who am I to tell you that's not a good thing? There's like coffee cafes in the city like Patricia, they do a double shot. Everything's 8 ounce, 19.5 grams or something per coffee. Yeah. No one can tell them they've got a bad business.
No, it's not that it's bad. It's great. And they pump through, like, if that's their choice.
For us, it was like, well, we need to be able to compete and we want to use less and we want to do it more efficiently, because there's another aspect to this. Is like, say, for example, we got a 3-group machine, right? If we wanted to make if we wanted to make as many coffees as we can within 30 seconds, we can fit 3 coffees on the drip tray if it is a double shot, right? Well, now that we do a split shot, it's 6. So we can actually make coffee twice as fast.
Do you know of anyone else doing this?
Well, I'm sure there's more.
Do you know of anyone?
No, not off the top of my head.
Well, this is now known as the Kirk method.
Oh,
so now that you've said it, this is where it's like you want to own it, take it in. Just like come on the pot now, be like, oh, you're Kirking, are you? When people see it now, they'll be like, oh, you're doing a Kirk.
But the thing is, a 25 gram, we figured out that we needed a 25 gram basket, which I didn't even know existed until this year. So I had to work with Eric from Lamazocco. Actually got me onto that. He really helped me. And so we kind of calculated what we needed to go.
He really helped me. Here's a 25 gram basket.
Well, yeah, but one thing we kind of had to figure out along the way was you need to actually roast you need to roast a certain way to be able to make that effective, because your coffee needs to dissolve at a high enough rate. So it might not work for every coffee to just go make it in that method, and then it's effective. And we figured we went through a lot of pain, to be honest, in the first few weeks, kind of going through that. So, it wasn't like it just instantly worked. We had to calibrate the machine a certain way. We had to make sure we had the water filter, believe it or not,
magnesium.
to make sure that worked.
Well, you screwed it up at first, didn't you?
Oh yeah, the first 3 days of operating, our coffee tasted like shit.
Yeah.
And then we changed the magnesium. We changed the filter to a magnesium heavy filter, because there's like, in Melbourne the water's so soft that you don't always have the mineral content in the water to make the coffee that you need. So, that was a huge learning for us.
Well, this is going to be great. This is exciting. I mean, let's hear more about your new venture as you do that. As we go along, we can talk about like the steps that you're going. What a perfect time for you to start your socials of Kirk the Barista.
Kirk the Barista.
You should see this little D-bag walking in here, vlogging. He's got his little octopus tripod on his like 1990 like camera that you'd see at a house party.
Yeah, we can get it on frame. Liam,
get it on frame.
Yeah, Liam,
he's walking in, vlogging. He's holding it all out.
Yeah,
he's a bad boy.
No, it's great. They're a great little camera.
Sony RX7, version 100 or something like that. Yeah, I'm learning this all for the first time. Yeah, I find it so hard.
But perfect timing for you to start that with the new shop opening, especially with those different stances, with you traveling a bit more. You were just saying going up to the Gold Coast and that. And maybe that leads us in. I know it might be in a few weeks, but maybe we do that content creation episode that we were talking about, and it can kind of be like advice for people, but then also some like, we can talk about some, content series that you should create.
Yeah.
And people can kind of see them come to life like over that week after listening to the podcast.
Well, I want to be as open as I can about it from now. And like, I think we're going to take some risks in the next few months where it's like, this could backfire on us badly.
Yeah.
We're taking a risk doing it the way we want to, but if it works out, the rewards
Game changer.
The rewards would be awesome.
So where can we follow you? Is at Kirk the Barista?
At Kirk the Barista.
At Kirk the Barista. Get on, honk that follow button on his Instagram. He needs it.
Specifically honk.
Yeah, you got to honk it.
Well, an update on that. We got a. So last week you asked me how many followers I had. It was 150. Now 250.
Oh, there you go.
We're seeing growth. We're seeing growth, but this is actually something I'm really looking forward to sharing with people.
Now, this is we've kind of been chatting out to people about reaching out to us and sending us some hot takes, some messages. We've received a bunch of really nice messages of people who are just loving the pod in Australia, international. But we also did get a couple hot takes that I just thought I'd read out here as a little tester segment as we do this. So we have one here from Alex Wilson wrote in. I'm going to kind of paraphrase here and just kind of get it down because it's quite a hefty kind of message. So he's just basically saying, Sometimes we're so focused on being like the wine industry and making sure people take us seriously that we miss out on an opportunity to be way more interesting and actually focused on a good product. He goes on to talk about how people get so up in arms about co-fermented coffees, about inoculations and all that kind of stuff. But does it really matter? If it tastes good, it just tastes good.
Yeah.
So that's coming in from Alex Wilson. That is a hot take.
Yeah.
We kind of just chatted about it before with Two Sugars. We just talked about it with the Rumble Boys and about that side. They were not into it. They're the purists. They weren't having a bar of it. But obviously, like you know, build it up, and we've kind of talked about it. That it's just about transparency and openness. Like there's a place for all of it.
Well, one of the interesting things, and thank you to Alex for sending that in. Yeah. Thank you to everyone who's sending these in. But one of the interesting we sort of to reflect on that with what we just spoke about with the Rumble guys is that they they embrace a lot of these. They embrace the transparency of their coffee, and the cost of doing business for them is higher, but like they're arguably more successful than the cheap trash coffee roasters that we kind of. They're pretty widespread in Melbourne. I kind of forgotten what Alex said. To be fair, it was a big one. What this hot take he said.
What his hot take was?
Yeah.
Oh, it was just saying that we get too caught up in trying to be like the wine industry and having all these parallels. We just need to be more fun and be our own industry and do what we want to do. Like be more exciting with it. He even went on to talk about different roasters that are, selling their coffee in like VHS packaging as the design style and have wild names. So it's just like, stop trying to be wine and be like, this is our purest varietal of like what we're doing. It's like, have all that stuff, but it's like, go have some fun. If you're going to do a co-ferment and it's funky and it's cool, why not?
Well, I also think we don't do that effectively in coffee.
It was more like the kind of the beer industry, that approach, like the different flavored like craft beers and all the wacky labels and everything.
I kind of feel like in coffee, I'd love to get into virtual reality one day, where it's like, if people really understood what it's like to go to a coffee farm, to go to a coffee origin and see what it's like and got the opportunity to feel it, I think their perspective would be so much better different about the industry.
Yeah.
Like I went to Bolivia and I saw people literally in the hills on slopes like that, like very steep slopes, picking coffee. Sometimes it's, wet and, it's a hard job, and then they literally sort it by hand at the end of the day. Things that Australians a lot of people in the Western world in developed countries just wouldn't do. So, I mean, to be able to have that virtual reality one day, I think would be awesome.
Hot take with Two Sugars, number 2 from Paul Asquith. This one is directed right at one Kirk Pearson. He says, the Hoshizaki isn't the best ice machine. Don't hate on me. Penta owns Manitowoc. From what I understand, the Hoshi wastes so much water and you are killing the planet. I added the killing the planet bit. But he said it wastes so much water, and he says, well, that's what Manitowoc told me anyway. And he says, love you guys. Podcast is great listening. Thank you, Paul.
Well, thank you, Paul.
You're thanking him.
Thank you for your contribution to the show. But I mean, I'm going to have to condemn you for your extra hot take because it's so untrue. I mean, if you weren't selling enough drinks where you weren't using enough ice, then maybe you do waste a lot of water.
Is that the element? Is it talking about wasting water and not using enough ice? Or is it saying like to produce the ice, the things like spitting out water? It's just like,
look, to be honest, I'm trying to just construct an argument that suits me. Because how dare you say that? The Hoshizaki has been the best thing ever. And, you
started dating it, didn't you?
I'm
you got in a committed relationship. You actually moved in with it.
Well, look, we had a nice seafood dinner.
I'm going to take you out for a lovely seafood dinner.
And I called it back.
But
it's like been the best investment I've ever had.
Yeah, it makes some beautiful ice.
When it gets hot, we sell more ice drinks because people like that it doesn't melt.
I thought you were going to say because it's hot. I'm
people have actually come up and said to me, I know like people listen to this podcast and probably make a big deal out of it, but there's regular customers that have been like, oh man, I like your ice.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised people noticing it.
What's the ice that the internet likes? It's like the like fast food, that small ice. Like, you know what I'm talking about? They're always like, you have the good ice. You have the good ice. Is it that? Is like pellets?
It's a tiny little pellet.
Feels like more American. Maybe I'm diving into that side.
I prefer bigger ice. Big ice is good. Yeah.
Big ice. Well, it melts. People like it because it melts slower because of its what is it called? Thermal mass? Is it that?
Well, yeah, it's more dense as well. Yeah. So it's like, it's not just, you know how some ice cubes have, it's like just a shell and there's like a hollow inside.
Same with cocktails, right? Yeah. It's like, it's going to dilute the cocktail less or it's going to melt slower, like preserving that.
Yeah, you get a Negroni with a big chunk of
ice.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it significantly more.
Yeah, I mean, we've been rambling on a bit here. Was there anything else you wanted to say about the Rumble guys?
Yeah, I think that they struck me as very genuine.
Yeah, they are.
You know, and I like how they're into boxing as well. Obviously, not your favorite element about them, but you know,
I don't know if they're that into it. I think they just thought it was a good hook at the time.
We had a good chat while you were in the boxing.
Oh, you did. They're into it. They're into the boxing.
Yeah, they agree
I'm wrong.
with me. You know,
I'm wrong.
Bivol should have won.
Yeah, I think they're great. And it's, you know, when you see companies like that are putting the extra effort to get B Corp certified, a lot of effort. They release an impact report, and this thing is dense of like all of the impact there. They're very transparent with all of their coffees and where it comes from. So no one has to do that. They do it. They create a great community. They, you know, if you're looking for a wholesaler, those guys are there to support you and help you. And like, that'd be some of the best that I could think of.
And that's another good thing we spoke about. It's like choosing the cheaper option in like a coffee supplier. It's not always the best move for your business. You might end up losing money because of that, because, you know, if it's lower quality and, you know, you don't get the level of service that you need, and or for a bunch of variety of reasons, it's actually sometimes a backward step for you. So, that's interesting.
And the final update that we have here is the Shred Fest. Like, this is only a week later from when we talked. I only realized after we shook hands about it that I'm a solid like 3 or 4 kilos heavier than Kirk, and we agreed on the same finish line. So I don't know how this competition works, and it was on film. I shook hands. So
what was the prize again? If I win, you have to take me out to breakfast and I get to choose your outfit.
It was something like that. Maybe we need to agree on like an outfit as a previous thing,
well,
or even have the followers vote. Have Instagram.
That's a good one.
Vote. So maybe we could put out like 3 options or something with like a
maybe one's as Grimace, you know, on the
the Grimace.
Yeah, you can be.
You
Grimace.
have to dress as Grimace and go buy a Grimace shake,
or like a pimp.
Okay,
random one. Darth Vader,
please.
Mike, you dressed as Darth Vader.
Oh yeah, I could do it. Just pouring the coffee through the vent system on the front. Yeah, and then I'll look just as burnt as Darth Vader after I pour a scalding hot long black through my mask.
Yeah, the ventilation system might be.
Was that good? Were you proud that I knew about Darth Vader being burnt and Anakin and whatnot?
I was, but I mean, you know, it's Star Wars.
What happened in the Star Wars when there was like a planet that's just a casino? What's that? All of a sudden, aliens are wearing tuxes.
Yeah, well,
what is happening there? It's just
that's amazing. You're talking about the cantina. Look,
cantina is amazing.
I don't mind that there is a Star Wars casino. Execution could have been a bit better. I like how you asked me the question.
Trick question. All right, that brings us to another episode. Oh my God, I cannot speak. I'm so tired today. We've tired, hungry. We've gone long. It's been like 4 or 5 hours of recording here. That brings us to the end of another episode of Coffee Break. Thanks for tuning in. Again, we just read out some of those messages. If you have anything to say, any hot takes,
send us a video as well.
Send us a video.
Yeah, I want some video hot takes that we can. We have the capability to play it. So
you know what else I want to bring in at a later stage? A live call. Just call in on the show.
Yes.
Or maybe we should just start live calling people.
Prank calling coffee people.
We can just call Dan Dick. Get him to bark on the phone.
Let's. Can we actually prank call him next week?
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to have Damien from Co & Co next week.
Oh, maybe we should do like a fake complaint.
Well, he's a good sport. So
my old boss used to call me up at like the end of the shift when I'm closing, and he'd like put on a voice and he'd be like, "I just wanted to call in and say I had mushrooms today and I've had explosive diarrhea all afternoon." And you're sitting at that point where I'm like, you half know this is him, but also what if it is a real customer? I'm like, get out of here, And he used to do it all the time, and it was so annoying.
Well, I mean,
you learned. You fooled me once.
We're going to prank call Dan Dick next week.
I love that.
And this coffee break won't be released in time, so we can effectively do that. But you'll be able to chronicle it if you're listening in.
Yep. So hit us up on all the socials. Send us a video. Hit our emails at hello@itsjustcoffeepod.com. We'd love to hear from you. I was going to say, as always, it's just coffee, but it's not. It's coffee break. What a time. What an effort.